Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose when you're trying to define yourself, it's always a difficult task. I mean, everyday people obviously work in a number of different industries, and for myself, being a footballer, obviously, it takes a big chunk of my life, and I like to think that I have a lot of other things that define me as well. And I think over the past 18 months, I've done a lot better job at sort of spreading myself out and turning myself into a more holistic sort of human being. And that takes time, and it takes a while to sort of mature and get your head around who you are, and trying to identify yourself as a footballer and also as a person as well. Well, there's a lot of parts to who I am. Obviously a guy who grew up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. Love my local footy club. Spent a lot of time down at Anglesey as a kid, surfing, swimming, mucking around, being normal like everyone else, I guess. And from a holistic point of view, I suppose, I've obviously invested a lot of time throughout my life in football, but also in my studies and surfing and hobbies and a number of other things as well. It's hard to predict, how your life would have gone if it was different, but I think these mental health issues are clearly associated with your circumstances as well as your genetic disposition and your ability to deal with challenges in your life. And I think for me, because I'd put it off for so long and really had no prior education about it, and really probably wasn't able to face up and realise that what was going on inside my head was not normal. I really put myself in a position where obviously I came to a point where I was really struggling to get by, and it can be a really, really hard thing to deal with. It's a hard thing to admit to yourself, hard thing to face. And once I did, look hard at myself, and through various avenues of speaking to psychologists and psychiatrists, and sort of getting my head into a space where I realised that what was going on wasn't normal, but it was preventable, was treatable, and I was going to get better. I think it was a lot easier for me to deal with. For sure. Well, I think the goal of getting back to playing footy last year was really clear, and obviously I did that towards the back end. I think I missed about 6 or 7 weeks, but the main thing for me was to be able to have that as a goal in the future. But it sort of wasn't really set in stone in terms of a time frame, and the process of trying to really deal with the issues that I was going through without having that massive burden of playing football at that moment was a key part in me being able to sort of make up some ground. And I think in that middle part of the year where all those things were sort of going wrong, and I'd sort of been injured, and I couldn't train, I couldn't sleep, and a number of things sort of just snowballed into the point where I couldn't really get out there and give my best on the weekend. And that sort of led me to, all right, well, how about we try and fix the root of most of these problems now, put myself in a good place to get back at the end of the year and move positively into the future. The Bulldogs were, an incredible support for me. We have a full-time psychologist who's available to all players, and I think every day and every year the AFL and the sports within Australia are slowly learning and developing their skill set to help young individuals. And all the research has suggested that young men are really bad at identifying issues within themselves, so they're quite good at identifying it within their friends and helping people. And I think the constant conversation about obviously trying to change the stigma and trying to change the attitude within Australia and the culture of Australia has been really positive. And now I think you'll see in the industry steps to talk about how we prevent it and how we equip kids with skills through school and through football and other avenues to better tolerate sort of challenges in their life in the future. Yeah, I think the whole culture of Australia's attitude towards mental health has changed, quite abruptly in time, in the last, few years in particular. And clearly in the AFL, we're sort of heralded as, invincible, or we're clearly the role models and the athletes who are, put on a pedestal. But, quite clearly the environment we're in is, subjective to high stress and challenges on a daily basis, and obviously that makes players susceptible to issues if they're not equipped to deal with the rigours of AFL footy. So I think there is a clear change. Obviously we've seen past players and current players talk about issues they're having mental health wise, and I think the normalisation that this is out there, it's something that we all have to deal with and be aware of is the key point in being able to deal with it in the future. Yeah, it's interesting. The whole is mental health directly correlated with your personal experiences within AFL or within sport or within your job? There is clearly some sort of correlation, and obviously that sort of vindictive, aggressive sort of approach to players and performance and pressure and stuff is always going to be a challenge, but it's sort of something that's deeply entrenched in a competitive environment. I think it's comes back to the players' ability to identify what the key messages are from coaching groups and from staff and whatnot, to try and facilitate in your mind that they're trying to help me get better, or this is what I need to take out of it, without taking it as personally as it might come across. It'll always be sort of fluid motion. Obviously, with millennials coming in, there is a change of culture and a change of understanding in the modern day than it was in the past. But we're going to all have to constantly strive forward to better equip ourselves to deal with it personally, to facilitate people who are going through bad times, and also to help each other, prevent these things from happening. Clearly, our platforms as professional sports people is bigger than the average person. From my personal experience, there's very little conversations happening around mental health in sport, but slowly and surely we are getting some conversation happening in the public forum, which is extremely important. And will always be a small portion of the community which can advocate for social issues and that can push positive messages into the public forum. And we do have a responsibility in part to make sure that we are a positive influence on the community on issues like this, for sure.